Well, hello, everybody. I'm Erica Lukes, your host of Expanding Frontiers. I'm also the executive director of Expanding Frontiers Research. You can go visit our nonprofit at expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out our work. Jack and I are always working very diligently behind the scenes and also to pledge support for our work. We do a lot of records requests, and those records requests come with costs, as do our website, the other work that we're doing at the archiving. So any help that you can give us, we appreciate, because this show and our work is sponsored by all of you. So thank you very much for your support. I want to give a shout out to everybody here in chat. Let me just see Jim. Thanks for staying up. Bill, nice to see you. And Amy, please, I hope you're doing well. And I think of you often. But I also want to thank people who are listening on different platforms like my Facebook account. We are not broadcasting on Twitter any longer just because you need to get a blue check. And I think Jack and I have discussed this. We might have a couple fundamental views about supporting Twitter. So I feel like I do not at this point want to pay for a blue check. So the broadcasting won't be taking place on Twitter, but you can find us on all of our YouTube channels. Specifically, if you can go to the Expanding Frontiers Research channel, click like, subscribe, and please share our content, because we want to get more eyeballs on the work that we're doing. We feel it is very important. We have, as you know, who follow the show, we've been moving out of, the UFO sphere, even though we're still going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But we are touching upon issues that are important to both Jack and myself. I had Dr. Brian Mensch on the show, who is a physician here in Utah, who started Physicians for Healthy Living and has done a lot of work on the environment nationally. He was he's a wonderful human being and providing important information for all of us. And next week, we're going to be interviewing Dave Troy, who's been on the show. He is a technologist, and you can follow him on Twitter. He is also a writer. He does a lot of work on social structures and the internet and breakdowns of social structure, and also misinformation and disinformation campaigns that are taking place that have very negative consequences, especially as we move into this election cycle. So you can follow Dave Troy's work. The show next week is going to be Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday early evening, instead of Friday, to accommodate Dave's schedule, but I'll make sure to send out updates so you can know all about that. Now I want to present my friend, my partner, Jack Brewer.
Hello. Thank
How
you,
are you?
Eric.
Absolutely. You've been staying out of trouble this week?
Oh, enough. You know how it goes. Waist deep in public records requests, and I've run into a batch where they just require a lot of correspondence, and that's how it goes sometimes. And been working a lot on that. Great to see everyone in chat. Thanks for being here. Like Erica was saying, if you'd please share us on your social media platforms, we'd really appreciate it. William has been doing a good job over on the Facebook page. Stop by there and see him if you're a Facebook person. You can follow Expanding Frontiers Research on Twitter. We're still kind of hanging around there. Or just share us and help us out where you can. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take a moment to thank the people that do contribute, both like William and Peter and Mario, people like that are sharing our content, that are promoting the work that we do, which is really critical, because we're a bare bones team. And I think that it's incredible to me to know the accomplishments that we have made, just with this small, you and I, and then a handful of people that are helping us out in the social media sphere. I mean, our accomplishments are something I'm very, very proud of. So at Expanding Frontiers.
Yes, I am too, and you should be proud of it, Erica. We have some volunteers that have helped with letters of support for grant requests. We have some folks that have agreed to be written into grant proposals that we've submitted, and we have folks that have helped behind the scenes with media lists for specific markets and specific types of media organizations, writers, and television news people that might be interested in one type of story as compared to another. And all of that has been very helpful, and we really appreciate the way our friends and community members have come together and helped support EFR. And of course, financial donations are always welcome as well. You can go over to the Patreon and help out there. We post records there as we receive them. We go more into the specifics at Patreon of how the requests are done and what we're working on and things like that than we do in the blog. I tend at the blog on the main website, the WICS website, expandingfrontiersresearch.org. I tend to post there when stories are coming to fruition or when I have the records to share that we have analyzed and can put some meanings to. And at the Patreon, we tend more to discuss them and kind of show folks how it's going as things develop.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say hello, Vanessa. It is so nice to see my fabulous friend in chat. All of you, Jack and I talk about this a lot. I think every show, there's a reason that we're here, and it's all of you. And I'm very proud of the wonderful community that we've created over the years. You cannot get into a chat room and see kinder, more intelligent people really talking about some of these issues. And so that for me, like, even if I'm feeling like, you know what, I just want to go have a, beer with the boys or like whatever, that just is dumb because I don't do that, but anymore, maybe back in the olden days, I'm just, really going fantasizing now. But, so we, I love, as tired as I can be, as stressed as I can be, I love like being here and then just seeing everybody and seeing like the respectful dialogue we have. That's a really cool thing. And in the UFO sphere of whatever we've got going on, for us to be able to create a community that is safe and supportive is a really big deal. And, that's something that all of us should be proud of. So thanks, you guys.
Yes, thanks. And great to see you here, Vanessa. Always a pleasure to see you.
I know, I love it. And so Mario's having internet issues, so I just wanted to share that. But again, thanks, Mario, for everything behind the scenes. So I want to just, before we get into some of our stuff at Expanding Frontiers, of course, being on social media, you can't help but watch the, let's just show this one. This is Timber Shit. And he is Mr. UFO, clearly, as seen there with Linda Moulton Howe. Where to go on this one? But he has been very, very active, obviously trying to get UAP disclosure or whatever he thinks he's doing, because he's probably hanging out with people behind the scenes that are funding his campaign. But, he has been a very busy boy with talking about blatant racism and blatant sexism and, spouting off about the DEI hire and things like that, which is just really, in my opinion, not only with the head of the Secret Service, but now you've got Kamala Harris and things like that. And, I would definitely just say to the people in the UAP sphere, if this is your hero, then we all think you're kind of a dipshit. So I will just say that. I mean, talk about, ugly and horrible. I want to just quote you. Here's something from one of his lovely, let me just get rid of that. One of the articles, an interview with him, Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee said he's 100% sure that the federal government is covering up documents about UFOs, and he's not alone among members in Congress in trying to push for more information about what could be out there. We've requested documents, we've gone to interview pilots, and been stonewalled by our Pentagon. Clearly, he's hanging out with Eric Davis, too, behind the scenes. It's ridiculous. It's been going on since the 40s, Burchett said Saturday afternoon on Fox News. We're taking the gloves off. Ooh, I am so scared. Are you scared, Jack?
We might as well just dive right in. You mentioned that Dave Troy was going to be here this week. I'm looking forward to talking with him about this as well, that it's been a year now since that trio testified to Congress.
Yes, let's just show
So-called
this.
whistleblowers. It's been a year this week, I think today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Americans for Safe Aerospace right there, 1 year anniversary. Look at that. Well, there's really not much. Well, you could say quite a bit, but
So I will be interested to get some people's perspective, like Dave Troy, that UFOs are not. I'll paraphrase him here. I interpret he told us when we spoke before, when he was here before, that he's not really interested in UFOs other than when they overlap into the geopolitical landscape like this. And so I'll be interested to see if, from his perspective, if it's all fizzled out, or if it seems like, from my perspective, it seems like it was a bunch of rhetoric and grandstanding, and there's not really any urgency attached to it currently, like they had claimed there was, like they being Burchett, Luna, their colleagues. I'd also kind of like to make a bit of a disclaimer. To be clear, I am unapologetic about my values and political positions. However, that stated, I realize that there's really not any way that one can start exploring these topics and not offend or upset various people and their values and their opinions from time to time. So I kind of wanted to get this out of the way and say that I understand that perhaps some of the people in leadership positions currently in the Republican Party and what we might call the right side of the aisle may not represent the values and the policies of people that consider themselves to have conservative values. However, they may vote for these people for reasons ranging from peer pressure to it's their best hope that they'll get back to the values that they hold and cherish. And even that, I mean, let's face it, there's some emotionalism too, that people buy into the idea that they're just morally bad if they vote for a Democrat. That happens as well, depending on where you're raised and everything. So then the way I can kind of empathize with that is many of the Democrats in power right now do not represent the extent of progressive policies I would like to see. You won't find anyone any more socially liberal than I am. I get much more back to center and maybe conservative even on some other issues, but I'm pretty socially liberal about live and let live. Let people make the decisions about themselves and things like that. But I just wanted to say that
I thought that was MAGA.
I think sometimes it's hard to, we're not specific sometimes of what we're talking about too, and maybe I'm not as well, that like if I just throw out a remark about the GOP or about one issue or another, I can see where that can be taken as offensive if I'm not clear and specific about what it means to me. And then maybe it still might be offensive. But
It's
I
all, I
just
mean,
wanted to throw that out there.
well, yeah, and thank you. And I mean, I know that, I know that there are people in chat that have very differing viewpoints from us. And of course, we're always respectful. And I think that's what has been missing for 8 years, is having a respectful dialogue. You believe in something different because of this policy. I can understand your point of view. You have different things that you cherish and you hold dear. I understand that. We're all human beings. We all want our freedoms. We all want to live in a country where there's no chaos. And, at least I do, I mean, I think that for me to see the intersection, very blatant intersection between the UFO topic and the people that are talking about racism and this ongoing misogyny. I mean, just this is all intersecting with the UFO stuff. And so for people to get all up in arms, about that, well, I'm sorry, Robert Bigelow, how much did he give fund for Trump's legal fees? Give me a break. Do you think that they've been mining your data for 20 years just because they're looking for UFOs? Well, probably not. I mean, people like seriously need to wake up. And I think that just because we are open-minded, or just because I love looking up at the universe. I love learning things. I don't think I've had experiences in my life, as I've talked about before, that I can't explain. I know now, having researched this a lot, spending a lot of time going down rabbit holes, I know that what the whole narrative is complete crap. It is not, there's nothing true about it. And I'm sorry. And it alarms me, and I'll continue to talk about this, to see the way that people are being manipulated for political purposes. I was talking about that last week with Guffey, Robert Guffey, on the show, and we were, just talking about how easy that is for people who go down these conspiracy rabbit holes, like I have, like you have, to, like get a little bit of a kernel of truth here, and then, oh, you're going to go down here, and pretty soon you're doubting this narrative over here. And it's, we see stuff like that. We saw that with the assassination attempt, and the, just the, all the Twitter feeds that happened. Oh, the Secret Service, they did this. It was a setup. It was blah, 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 blah. All of this stuff. And it's nonsense. And if we don't think that the UFO world doesn't figure into all of that, then we're mistaken, and we need to get a clue, because, this is a pretty pivotal time in our country.
Yeah, we've talked with Dave Troy about this, and guests we've had like Mark Pilkington, and a couple weeks ago, Dr. Jeb Card. And, one of my pet sayings is it starts and ends with standards of evidence. And that's where we're like doomed from the jump if we can't agree on what the facts are. We can disagree on what the facts indicate, or what policy might be best to deal with a certain situation, or something to that matter. But we have to be able to accurately identify what happened somewhere and what didn't happen, and based on professional research practices that show us this chain of events, and what we're willing to take as evidence, and then how we're going to rate that evidence. And when we can't agree on fundamental things like that, is how we end up at such polar opposites, with no way to negotiate or compromise the circumstances, is when we just like if you're just going to argue that Linda Moulton Howe is a credible person that has proven aliens kidnap cows, there's nowhere to come to terms to work together on a circumstance like that. Just as an example.
Right. And I, just so you know, I'm having our power we just had a little power surge here. So if anything happens, guys, you know how to roll with me. If the show goes down, just like last week, guys, you all found me after the link, after the Robert Guffey thing with went down. Just I'll create another link, and you can find us in a bit. But I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, I
But
mean,
your
standards.
point's well taken that it's gonna heat up more. It always does. What election or not, it always heats up more. People that can use any topic for a political or power or money advantage will do so. And so it's not Erica or I that are doing it. We're not putting topics in Burchett's inbox. We're not asking Luna to say the things she's saying. We're not asking Elizondo to publish a book that is probably going to be subpar as far as research and proving his assertions go. One could reasonably think based on his activities to date. And so when this, as Erica's point is well taken, intersects with politics, well, then it's kind of putting you in a position to take a stance on that and how it's playing out. I'd agree with that.
Right. And I just think, when I'm looking at some of the people in the UFO hero, worship circle, I'm not going to name any names, but who am I kidding? Give me 10 minutes. I'll name them all. But, I think that, it's just like you're flying your racist flag there, dude. I mean, it is so obvious right now to see people with huge followings that are parroting these ridiculous talking points that, in all honesty, which we'll talk to Dave about, they're probably Putin propaganda talking points that everybody's parroting to create division in our own country. And just think about it. If we, 8 years ago, would we be having these discussions about whether a woman is fit to serve in a position at the head, being the head of the Secret Service? If a woman is fit to be in any other job that a man doesn't think she's fit to serve in, we never would have had those discussions 8 years ago. I mean, would we have like a total abortion ban? I mean, like, all of these things, people telling me what to do, or my children, or things like that with their bodies. Like, what? I don't get this, and I'm sorry to go off. I'm going off the rails, but whatever. It feels really good, and it's my show and our show. But I think that it is really interesting to me to see people who are jumping up and down about their rights, but they clearly don't give a crap about your rights, because it's all about, are your rights offensive to me? Well, then you don't have any. And you know what? I do have cats, and yes, I am a crazy cat lady. JD Vance and your little couch moments. So it's really interesting, and I have to say that I think at the end of the day, we, all of us that are here, like I said, I know that we freaking have differing opinions about certain things, but all of us here are good human beings, and all of us have friends from diverse backgrounds, and all of us have, teachers, parents, that have all been through things in their life. And so we're seriously going to sit here and start discouraging or making fun of people that have disabilities, or making fun of people of color? Like, no. That doesn't work for me. And I think, as I've, again, like you and I've talked about before in the show and privately, to see the way that the UFO world has been dominated by some of these nuts since the inception of the subject, that should just pretty much sum it up. And no offense to you, Jack, but let's look at the people going to the MUFON conferences. They're all a bunch of old white guys. Sorry, guys. I know that. No offense to all of you, but
stereotypically not a diverse crowd, no. And part of the problem with the inception of the modern day UFO phenomenon, like the 1940s, 1950s, it pretty much anything out of that era would be laced with nationalism, racism, sexism, because if I'm understanding correctly, that was pretty much the way white people lived at that point in time, that were the majority, were the main class in America. And so, of course, it does, you know, and then it just depends on how detailed we want to get with it about, and I'm sure we're going to talk some tonight about the Ivy League and their interests in socialism and communism and organizations that were fronts for socialism that had a much different annotation at that point in time than it does today. And, you know, Kehoe's affiliation with Lindbergh and all of these things that were they just products of their time and it is what it is? Yeah, I guess to some extent. And it needs to have an asterisk and need to be pointed out that these guys, very much like we see today, had political interests that were more important, or at least as important to them as anything else. And they seeded it into all of their activities. And that certainly was not exempt from NICAP and books they wrote and everything else.
Absolutely. And so I want to talk a little bit. Why don't we just get, since you're going there, we were going to talk about this anyway. You just wrote a blog post that was published a couple days ago. Let's dig into that and talk about that.
Sure.
In Harvard.
Yeah, they're Harvard, Princeton, they were recruiting grounds, still are, for the Central Intelligence Agency, the FBI, the intelligence community. As we talked about with Dr. Card, of course, the agencies want the best and the brightest. Harvard has a long history in a number of its departments with interacting with the CIA. All of these schools were subcontracted in MK Ultra, for instance, with the psych departments, virtually all of them. I'd be hard pressed to think of one that wasn't, that we're mentioning and inferring here. The astronomy department at Harvard was long affiliated with national security projects. And one of the things that took place in the 1940s was its director at that point, a man named Harlow Shapley, was investigated repeatedly, pretty much consistently by the FBI. And they repeatedly found in internal security investigations that he was involved with groups that the FBI at least recognized as fronts for communist or anti-American behavior, un-American behavior, they considered it. And he was much more liberal, I think, than suited Director Hoover at that point in time. And Erica has pulled the blog post up for folks to see here. And Dr. Shapley pretty much stayed under surveillance, right, wrong, or indifferent. The FBI had an eye on him. And one of the things that arose out of that was his colleague at the Harvard Astronomy Department was a Dr. Menzel. And Dr. Menzel was an outspoken critic of the UFO topic. He was an avid skeptic. He wrote books on it. He was insulted by much of what NICAP asserted and put forth when that came along. And the FBI repeatedly investigated Dr. Menzel as well. You can access all of the records that we have obtained through the blog post, and you can read at our Patreon about our efforts to obtain more records as well. We're currently in correspondence with the National Archives about more records on both Dr. Shapley and Dr. Menzel. And one of the things Dr. Menzel had been involved in was he was an expert in atmospheric phenomena and circumstances. And this was useful to the Navy in knowing how radio signals and communications could best be transferred, what time of day, what conditions. And Dr. Menzel worked on projects like that with the Navy. He would later work on as well about what the conditions could be that American intelligence could best try to intercept messages to. And so this was very intriguing stuff in his peripheral involvement with the UFO phenomena, as you can imagine. And the FBI repeatedly showed in their memos that their biggest concern about Dr. Menzel was his affiliation with Dr. Shapley and the people that Shapley was affiliated with. Erica is showing us here an interesting memo that comes from the FBI files on Dr. Menzel. And towards the end of his career, after spending a lifetime under surveillance by the FBI for being involved in projects, and he had to be cleared to be in these projects, and then he had to continue to be kept under surveillance to make sure that he remained a low security risk. The FBI then formulated a plan to approach him as an informant or a double agent. And this grew out of, and we discussed this with Dr. Card a couple weeks ago too. This grew out of international academic conferences. And academics enjoy much more ability to roam among international borders than many other demographics of people. And so they became of interest to the intelligence community because not only could they travel and have international passports and go from country to country with good reason to be doing so, they were also interacting with the people that the intelligence community would be interested in approaching to be an asset or to get information from or to steal their secrets or flip into an asset and a spy. So these were the things going on at Harvard in the mid to latter 20th century, which sheds some light on things happening today. At EFR, we obtained records on Avi Loeb's Galileo project from the FBI. And thank you, Erica. And this is one of the pages that we obtained, which shows that an FBI communication was acknowledging what the project claims to be, that it's raised $1.7 million purportedly for looking for extraterrestrial technological signatures here on Earth. And they pointed out they were listing the specific things that the project was using for this work, and it involved telescopes. It discussed satellites, and many of the very things that the FBI had interest in, along with Dr. Shapley and Dr. Menzel 30, 50, 70 years ago. So that just gives us some food for thought. And then it just depends on how far we want to go with this, how much we want to dig down through the different sections of FBI memos on these people, how much we want to analyze each specific memo. And then it goes out in different directions. Like preparing for the discussion with Erica tonight, I was reminded of Jack Acuff, who was a NICAP president towards the end of the NICAP run, I would say early 70s, that era. And he was affiliated with a photography group. The name escapes me at the moment. It's in my book in writing. It's easy to find. But this photography group was recognized by the FBI as infiltrated by the Russians, and a cover for spies and cover for a place that material and money and things could be exchanged. So I had obtained FBI memos that showed that the FBI went and spoke with Jack Acuff when they realized that Russians were buying material from NICAP and from this agency, this photograph group that he was involved in. And they documented that he pretty much told them, you know, I can't very well tell them their money's no good. If they want to buy our material, what am I supposed to do, kind of thing. And they acknowledged in their memo that Acuff said he would make them aware of his interactions with the Russians and what they wanted and what they were doing. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes for researchers that have that eye towards the counterintelligence aspect of UFO investigation or purported UFO investigation to not understand how other people don't find this to be obvious, and to be clear that all of these CIA people involved with NICAP and with Acuff, and he was on a first name letter writing basis with Barry Goldwater and things like this. It was something in that era that was not even considered nefarious or necessarily undercover. Like, see, the Russians weren't hiding that they were approaching NICAP and the photography group either. Thank you, Society of Photographic Scientists and Engineers. That was indeed the name of the group. Thank you. And the Russians really had no reason to hide it. And see, that ties into what I was saying about academics and having the luxury to roam freely from nation to nation and academic circles. Is the intelligence community is really no different than anyone else when it comes to, if they want to know how cameras work and what's the cutting edge technology with cameras, they're going to ask guys that are camera experts. And if you want to know when radio waves will be most conducive to passing around the world and going through the atmosphere, you're going to ask astronomers. So where else would you find the best astronomers than Harvard, Princeton, Yale? And that's just been something that's been going on and will continue to go on and cast doubt upon the activities that these people that work at Harvard and Yale and various universities undertake. Like, there's different ways to look at why the FBI investigates a project like that. They may be under orders to make sure the people involved in the project can have security clearance. They may be making sure that the people that have security clearance remain a low security risk. They may be out of the loop and wondering why they're out of the loop, and just wondering, what is this person doing that claims they're interested in finding crashed spaceships on the bottom of the ocean? They may not buy the story. They may wonder what they're actually doing. There can be a lot of reasons they would investigate things like that. And if history is any indication, which it always is, the FBI and the intelligence agencies are going to continue to monitor such activities very closely for all of those reasons and several more. So
I'm having too much fun behind the scenes. Yeah, sorry, Jack. I'm just like back here, doing my production work, which is really overwhelming for all of you guys, I know. But you can go to our blog, as Jack was saying, expandingfrontiersresearch.org, to check out everything and then to see the work that we've also done about Avi Loeb with cryptocurrency and, all of that stuff, which is, now we've got, you were the one that sent me the latest lineup of the crypto conference.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's another reason we dropped Dave an email and said, hey, man, we need you to come back and tell us, what are we looking at here? 2 years ago, Avi Loeb and Eric Weinstein appeared together. And I don't mean even at the same event. I mean together on stage, was my understanding from the article, at the 2022 Bitcoin conference. And they discussed, they were obviously hyping Bitcoin, encouraging people to buy it and to promote Bitcoin, and had some remarks that I'll paraphrase. I quoted them precisely in the blog post, but basically that Bitcoin was going to help take humanity across the stars and would be the currency for spacefaring or something to this effect. And
sorry, we can't even get the astronauts home from the space station. That sounds good.
Paul
Hynek.
Thank you. Paul Hynek, J. Allen Hynek's son, was also really on that bandwagon and identifies himself as a consultant or promoter of Bitcoin and unapologetically promotes it. And we've watched him in videos and quoted him as saying Bitcoin and UFOs together at last and things like that. And we took a look at some of that stuff and found that was in 2022 when Avi Loeb and Weinstein, who works for Thiel, Peter Thiel, who's a whole nother story that the UFO people keep seeming to try to think that they can extract money from with no consequences or something. I don't know. But Weinstein works for Thiel, and Weinstein and Loeb appeared together at 2022 Bitcoin. And 2024 Bitcoin, which is now scheduled, has speakers that include presidential candidate Donald Trump, 2 or 3 others that I don't remember off the top of my head that are extremely outspoken right-wing extremists. Snowden is a scheduled speaker.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know what's happening with that guy, but
And yeah, that any way you want to look at it, it's clearly and front and center put itself in politics and aligned with the right. I mean, this is an objective observation. So there's that. Yeah, I was the one that sent you that. Yes.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just and I've talked about this before, but when I went to the conference up in Vernal by Skinwalker Ranch, it was just amazing to me. It's like, well, here's 10 minutes. Oh, my dad. Oh, cool. Okay, me as a kid, and oh, hey, buy a Bitcoin, buy this, blah blah blah, and it's just like, what the frick? I mean, this has gone from, like, hey, maybe could we have an hour of lecture about like a figure that is really historically important, or is this clearly just going to be about you guys doing your scam, your grift? I mean, it's like, I don't understand how people would even be excited by, paying like 200, $300 to go to a conference, and then, getting all these pitches as like being involved in a multi-level marketing scam.
Yeah, it's arguably like paying to get tickets to go to a mattress promo or a timeshare sale pitch or something like you're paying to
Soon it'll
go.
be a couch promo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And so you can go again to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out the blog, the work that we've done on Avi Loeb. And again, he's like, he's just an interesting person in all of this, and he is again aligned with the same people. You mentioned Eric Weinstein, Peter Thiel, the same old group keeps coming up. And it was really interesting a few years ago how you could see YouTube channels that were, I mean, just getting, millions of views, or maybe they were paying for whatever subs and things like that. But you could see like Kurt Jemangel or what, you know who I'm talking about.
I do know.
Like, there's another fellow who was some Navy SEAL or something who was in the picture with at the congressional hearing. You can see him back there, Sean Ryan, I think. I could be wrong about that, but it's just like, you see these, the same group of people, and then there's Put Off back there, and all of these con artists that are lurking behind the scenes, and it is quite fascinating to me. But
I see here, let me address William's comment here. Dr. Menzel was vilified by the UFO community, with the community being ignorant of the gentleman's background and work. Yes, that's correct. Dr. Menzel wrote a lot on UFOs and his skeptical opinion. In Richard Hall's work on MUFON's Best Evidence, he listed Menzel as who to consult with for an alternative opinion, even. And Menzel knew personally Roscoe Hillenkoetter, who was a director of Central Intelligence and who went on to be the president of the board of NICAP. And I obtained some records that you can, again, access through this blog post from a historical society that I interpret Menzel kept these records because he wanted it to be preserved, that in private communication with Hillenkoetter, he called Roscoe out for supporting Donald Kehoe, the director of NICAP, publicly, while in private communications agreeing with Menzel that there really wasn't much to the things that Donald was saying and publishing. And so Menzel and Hillenkoetter were both named on the infamous list of the MJ-12. And for those that are pretty new, the MJ-12 is a fictional list of intelligence officials that were supposedly put in charge of taking care of and securing crashed alien spaceships. Like the MJ-12 is who would have confiscated Roswell and all of these things theoretically, but it's never been proven to be true and is widely considered a hoax for many reasons. But Menzel and Hillenkoetter were both on the list of the 12, and many researchers suspected that that was a joke of some sort among the people that perpetrated the hoax, that knowing Menzel's skeptical view of the topic, that it would be humorous to say that he was on the committee that was covering up and studying the crashed flying saucers.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I just want to apologize because Emily is here. Weird Reads with Emily Louise, who I just adore and think the world of. But I apologize for the not being able to get into chat easily. I am toying around and trying to obviously use three of my different YouTube channels. And so I need to streamline that. And so I will definitely say next week, if you guys can go to Expanding Frontiers Research, if you can go to our YouTube channel, then I will just try to quell this nonsense that I've created. And then you can go right there to click like and subscribe, and then also to engage in chat. So I appreciate your patience with that. And thanks for the heads up, Emily.
And thanks for being here, Emily. Always nice to see you.
Absolutely. And then I want to just, Kevin Randall, William is talking about Kevin Randall told me as much a few weeks ago concerning the MJ-12 hoax documents. And Bill, Kevin Randall's always been a very interesting person to me. I think that I've asked him to come on the show a couple times, but he has declined. And he's an interesting character. So interesting. And I want to just really quickly, Jack, before we move on to, are you okay to move on to?
Sure. Whatever you want to do.
Okay. I want to just show this really quickly because, we're going to bring on Dave Troy next week, and we're obviously talking about disinformation campaigns and people that, like we mentioned, that are involved, that are recruited from academia or various places to do things. I've brought this up before on the show. Gary Heseltine was on my show maybe 3 years ago. And this is very fascinating to me. So this is the cover of UFO Truth magazine, which is, this was taken obviously back in 2018, but this is a conference that was being held in Russia that was sponsored by Russia and China. And here you have, obviously, the who's who in the UFO world in Russia, talking with a group of Russian and Chinese. Jack, what do you think about this?
My initial thoughts about Russia and China funding a conference for American ufologists to travel abroad and present their material My initial thought on that is very much, I wonder why. I wonder who they actually wanted to talk to, why they wanted to talk to them, who they were trying to move around. Very much so. I wonder why that would be. I did some FOIA requests on that stuff to a couple of agencies, but was not able to obtain anything significant. I think, as we've discussed before too, I think the UFO topic often provides a good cover because people do avert from it. And I think that includes intelligence agencies too. I mean, like we know, we've talked to journalists that have dipped their toe in and said, I don't want to be the UFO person. I'm gonna, see if I can get a commission on writing about hiking in the mountains or something like that. And that's understandable. And I can very much envision that happening in the intelligence agencies too, that somebody's like, I'll do what I'm asked, but I really don't want to be the go-to UFO guy on getting profiles on all of these people and filing reports. And every time one of them decides to hop a plane to China, I'm the guy that you get called to figure out what he's doing. I can very much see where they would want to avert from it, which makes it more attractive to use as the cover that people don't want. Intelligence officials, customs officers, no, everybody. I mean, you and I have talked about this on the air before. The movie Argo is about the story of a brilliant CIA officer extracting personnel out of Iran during the crisis, the American embassy crisis in Iran. And he used a script, a UFO script, and claimed that he was making a movie about an alien fight, and that the landscape in Iran was attractive for the movie. And he claimed to be a Canadian and was supposedly flying in to do this movie. And I always felt like that wasn't just a random choice too. That I thought, I bet it gets him through customs faster with people just wanting to shove him along, that's his subject of interest as compared. Right. I mean, he's not flying in there saying he's doing a documentary on the Shah of Iran,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is interesting to me. And I think, I've mentioned this before. We've had conversations about this. Like when I talk to people in the old guards, that I would think would know better and know how this can be used as a subject to move information, to gather information. It's amazing to me that we would even think that wouldn't be possible, especially now given our current political climate, as we've been talking about, where you've got UFOs, Russian talking points, all of this stuff that is being interjected into things. I mean, it's amazing to me that people who should know better, decade after decade, have discounted this subject. And it's not because UFOs are real. It is because this subject can be marginalized and used as cover, as you mentioned.
You see that on both sides of the UFO aisle too. It's not just believers that want to overlook stuff. It's skeptics as well. That the skeptics can seem primarily interested in, is it alien or is it not? And if it's not alien, I'm moving on to the next case that I can laugh and show you how stupid you are, that I can show you it's probably not an alien. as if they're completely uninterested in, well, who funded this falderall that you just spent 3 years of your life playing with on computer programs and breaking down. And I don't mean who funded them doing it. I mean, how did it get brought to your attention? How did it get brought to the public's attention? Why? What are the more nuanced questions around these cases? And they show virtually no concern at all about what Peter Thiel's funding, what Robert Bigelow's funding. When you have a circumstance where Robert Bigelow is now conclusively known to have acted as a funding conduit for the Defense Intelligence Agency, wouldn't that mean that other projects he funded are under question about where the money came from and where the information went?
Well, you would think, unless they just got tired of his old bag of nonsense, which,
yeah, and so
I've heard rumor on the street is, yeah,
So yes, back to what you brought up, you do see this among believers as well, that they're completely willing to overlook why the Times ran with a story that they could not put any of the facts in place around, that was pretty clearly just an anecdotal story that was he said, she said. Why there are members of Congress that are willing to keep hyping this circumstance. And, you know, I've come right out and written about before that what we're basically talking about here is that, in a manner of speaking, the UFO disclosure movement is an attack on American intelligence agencies.
right,
And
absolutely.
And if a specific aspect of it may have not come from a global adversary, there is no question that those global adversaries saw a pretty good opportunity to use it once it was going.
Absolutely. And just say that one more time.
Sure. If the UFO disclosure movement is advantageous to global adversaries, it's an attack on American intelligence agencies. It frequently is characterized by self-described researchers, even American intelligence officers, from Major Donald Kehoe to the current high-profile people, calling on people with security clearances to leak classified information.
And then
that
creating
is a direct attack
right.
on the American intelligence.
Absolutely. And then, you know, doing what Elizondo and Grush and, you know, I mean, the alleged whistleblowers that are full of it, that are, you know, creating this discontent and, oh, we need to distrust people, and, you know, we're lighting the pitchforks. And I mean, it's so plain as day to see that that is taking place. It's like, give me a break. And I don't understand. I don't get how people who are quote unquote skeptics are so narrow-minded in their focus. You know, like I am not a skeptic. I'm actually quite a realist when it comes to this. I would like evidence after seeing what I've seen and going down all of these holes. But I want proof. But I just, this whole, I don't know, the whole thing, Jack, is just really fascinating to me.
And it takes us into areas where people are going to say, well, what about investigative journalism? What about when you see something that you know is wrong? What about this? What about that? What about? And there are protocols for that. There are commanding officers. There are attorneys that specialize in national security. A whistleblower is not someone that ends up in front of Congress with nothing to present but stories. A
Right.
whistleblower has evidence of what they're saying they are disturbed about, and they take it to an attorney and they get legal representation and they get it in the media. They don't just go to MUFON events making outrageous claims.
Right. Yeah. And I think, so we can look at this whole cast of characters, that is obviously, put off, and the boys are Bigelow, and the boys are running the things behind the scenes. But it's just like, I mean, oh my God, how many people do we have to see that are coming forward? And like, who honestly, if you, at the end of the day, if you really did digging into their background, which a lot of people have, you would see that none of this makes sense. Like they're, stolen valor. Come on, let's just get real on that with a few of these people. And it's like anybody can use their, well, I was in this, I did, blah 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 blah, and make themselves out to be more than they are. But I mean, it's just like if you got the same group of people who are promoting the crap that we've seen since 2017, and they've got nothing, but now we've got this new book by Elizondo and just more of this crap. And there have been reports over the years, different people have talked about the fact that people are being recruited behind the scenes. Military veterans are being recruited allegedly to go in and do dirty work, to intimidate people, and things. And so, I mean, there's some really interesting things at play. And what is the point there? And I definitely would encourage people to do research about disinformation, and extremist, the way people are radicalized, because I think that in the UFO world, people have been radicalized. It's just that because it's UFOs, it's just again like not taken seriously, but people have been radicalized. And so, to me, those are important things, and I'm looking forward to talking to Dave about some of that actually.
Yeah, yeah. And there's any number of people that have addressed this over the years. Mark Pilkington keeps coming to mind. Um, like one of the things that stood out to me about the Mirage Men film that I personally related to was as he went to these conferences, UFO Congress, different things he was going to, and was observing people just getting increasingly disturbed, their behavior about, is the CIA watching me? Are they following me? And all of this intrigue and paranoia. And we definitely have seen that on social media, that there are people that um, seem to fit some kind of profile that were easily recruited and seem to have meaning in being trolls. And I mean, they've come right out and said to me through social media that they were working on operations and things. And it's like, just wow, wow.
And I mean, this isn't exclusive to the UFO world. I mean, this is happening in
No.
all sorts of like gaming platforms. I mean, different, all over. There are groups and individuals who are very adept at obviously targeting individuals that show a specific need or vulnerability. And then you've got people that are mining data. Like I always, have to go back to Bigelow. Like, really, what was that guy doing with everybody's data? Because you can guarantee it was something along the lines of figuring out what makes people tick, certain people would be prone to reporting UFO sightings. It's very interesting. And now also to see on Twitter how you've got different groups that are popping up that, hey, we would love to get you to join our group. We are going to send messages to, our elected officials about this, and join the chorus, and hey, enter your information into this website, because we're going to be mining that and then grifting off of you, while we're at it. But it's just like, what point do people not understand the grift and not understand the national security implications and not understand the way that this is a detrimental thing to you as a person.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very reasonable concerns. Um, it comes, the UFO topic comes with a few things baked into it, and I felt like Donald Kehoe's lasting legacy, his biggest legacy, may have been that he demanded intelligence agencies prove him wrong. And that caught on with the public, and they still do it today. They make outrageous claims, they don't have proof to back it up, and they want someone to prove them wrong. Like I could prove it if the FBI would just give me the records that they want. I could prove it if the CIA would just give me these materials. And despite the promises again and again and again and again that the proof is in hand and about to come, once people make up their mind they believe in a Tom DeLonge, they really don't care when Linda Moulton Howe's Art's parts turned out to not be of interest to the Army. They just don't care. And they're not going to change their mind then about that Tom did all this great stuff, and like they don't care. It's like the end justifies the means, and if it's just on TV and people are talking about it, that's really all they care about. And I do think that in a lot of circumstances they've been taken advantage of, and pretty much at this point in my research, I think there's two kinds of people that promote UFO stories and belief in, like an absolutist, they're here, no need for negotiation type of platform. And that's people that have ill intentions and people that have been influenced by people that have ill intentions. Reasonable people just don't carry on that way and don't conduct their affairs that way. And one more thing I want to mention that's just baked into the whole UFO thing, it's just inherent to it, is this cloak and dagger secrecy. We have people in the UFO subculture who have spent years interacting extensively, who do not so much as reveal who they are. And the community acts as if that's a reasonable thing because
Right.
UFOs.
I wonder who you're thinking of, maybe. Well, I'm sure probably the same person I'm thinking of, but yes, and probably other people. But the main person, that I would be thinking of when you say that is somebody who loves to gather information and then encourage people to download all of his files, he, they, it, whatever. Um, data mining king, who has always been very adamant about being anonymous and again, yeah, I mean, you just have to, people in this subject throw out all caution and all rationality. It's like, oh, well, this guy is giving me 5,000, whatever, magazine articles about UFOs. So it doesn't matter who he is. I'm still going to download it to my computer because that sounds like a really freaking smart idea. But I'm not going to ask any questions. And I'm also going to, hold this person up to be a god. I mean, give me a freaking break. Like, first of all, we're living in an age where we are so vulnerable with our internet connections, with things that we download, all of this kind of stuff. Why in the crap do people give people who aren't willing to be forthright about their identities any time of day? And like, I understand that there are people, that that have been docs that are concerned about specific things. I mean, great. You guys listen to my show. You know what I've been through. You know my freaking name. So I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but thanks for bringing up that point, and thank you for letting me run with it.
Sure.
Yes, but let's just move right along because we've got some really interesting things to talk about. We have just recently, at Expanding Frontiers Research, just dropped a new article about Skinwalker Ranch and some of our research that we have been doing for quite some time. So, Jack, if you would just lead the way.
Sure. Oh boy, how much should I go into? Because some people know some of the story, but basically, back towards the end of February, we got information that we identified to be credible that a body had been recovered near Skinwalker Ranch off of a remote road, and that about 3 months earlier, a motorcycle was recovered in the same area. So we reached out to the sheriff's office to try to get confirmation of this. And the Uinta County Sheriff's Office gave us a statement that yes, they had recovered a body, and that's all they were willing to say. And I followed up in an email and told them that we had reason to believe the individual was in the area due to their interest in Skinwalker Ranch. And would the sheriff's office like to comment further on that? And they responded that no, they would not. They had nothing else to say about it. So then March 1st, we submitted a GRAMA request for records responsive to the motorcycle and the recovery of the body. And it was declined. We appealed to the chief administrative officer. The sheriff's office pretty much didn't process the appeal. The chief administrative officer responded that they didn't show her any records to review, so she really had nothing to work on or to be able to couldn't really rule one way or the other. So then we appealed to the State Records Committee, and that resulted, we still haven't had a hearing at the State Records Committee, but that resulted in negotiations with the Uinta County Attorney's Office, and they did assist us in starting to get records from the Uinta County Sheriff's Office. And we got the incident reports. We were able to identify that an individual indeed was in the area from California because they were interested in the narratives about Skinwalker Ranch that are cultivated and promoted on cable television and at Phenomicon and, in the fringe, for lack of a better term, community. And the individual, Andrew Crow, committed suicide a few yards off of the road, but was not found for whatever reasons. He had parked his motorcycle, took a 38 special he owned, and went into the woods and killed himself. And the motorcycle was impounded, we found out, and he left a letter to Thomas Winterton, cast member of Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, that the police interpret he left the motorcycle to Winterton, wanted Winterton to have the motorcycle. And we continue to get records. So I told y'all that to tell you this, that the latest blog post, they released 3 videos to us. And we posted smaller clips of the longer videos that you can go to our blog and view. And it shows
Well, here,
Body,
let me just roll one really quickly.
sure, sure. Can you hear me?
I am not
Can you hear?
sure. Let's see if we can do that. This layout is funky. Can you guys hear us as we talk about this? Can you give us a comment in chat? Oh, you can hear us. All
Okay.
right. Thanks, guys.
What you're seeing here is a Uinta County Sheriff's officer is explaining to an officer from the Bureau of Indian Affairs that he found this envelope addressed to Tom Winterton. And he's telling the officer that he found empty gun case with 38 special ammo. And that was taken from the dashboard cam. Then we also have footage from his body cam where we can hear their conversation. And you can view that on.
So, that side, get this, got an empty soft case with about 5 rounds of 38 special, no gun. Open up this side, this just gets, so we're gonna read through this and see what this is all about. Mr. Winterton, we have never met yet. I've noted your face forward, down to earth thought, full consideration before speaking. This is one reason why I'm turning Haley over to you.
Haley was the name given to Andrews Harley, and I wish, and we can this conversation goes on for a little bit longer, and you can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out the longer of the videos, because it's very fascinating to see as the officer is approaching, is contacted by or approached by 3 community members who are saying, that we found this bike, we found this letter. We are really afraid that there is a deceased individual, and we don't want to look for this person because that's not our job. We don't want to see that. We're afraid. But it was made very clear by at least 2 people that approached the police officers that they were concerned that there was an individual that was deceased or in peril. And so very interesting to watch the way that the officer, sees this envelope, pulls it out of the saddlebag, sees Tom Winterton's name on it. Clearly the BIA officer, that was the exchange that we showed where, she obviously understood who Tom Winterton was as well. And for him to read this quite lengthy letter, which we've got posted again at Expanding Frontiers Research, and you can see this 7-page letter of him talking about different energy, the portal, Bigelow, things like that. And it is, I think, to both of us, to all of us who read the story that we've worked on, and the people that were involved in the community. I mean, this is a very tragic event. Like we always try to drive home to people, actions have consequences, especially when you're promoting things that are not true, as we've seen repeatedly with Skinwalker Ranch crew. And so to have this take place, this tragedy take place, and to see also, as we look at the evidence that has been given to us after our records request, to see the fact that, this was almost in a way kind of, oh, this is funny because it's the UFO subject. We're not going to do a proper investigation. And then, they tow the bike, and then 3 months later, they find the body that you were mentioning is really close. It is so close that it is shocking to not understand how law enforcement did not find this individual. So there are lots of questions about all of this, namely, where to begin, Jack? What do you think when
There are a lot of aspects to it. You're right. I mean, I could literally like bullet point like a dozen things off the top of my head that this makes me think about. And as Erica was saying, we encourage you to go and not only watch the clips that we have on the blog, but if this interests you, click through to the file where you can see the entire interactions with the local residents. You can see the sheriff's office deputy go back to his vehicle, call in, ask him about Winterton, what's going on with this Winterton guy on the radio. And one of the things that stood out to me as I'm watching this clip, I'm seeing that it's November 24th, 2023, a little after 11 a.m. in the morning. And I'm thinking, okay, so he parked his bike, I guess, on Thanksgiving, and was eventually found 3 months later, about 20 yards off the road. And so as I'm watching it, thinking, that's Black Friday, the morning of November 24th. One of the things I think about is the resources that were spent. And yes, it's a tragedy. No one is denying that. Yet I also think of the resources that were spent trying to contact Winterton, radioing in, asking who he is, making sure they're understanding correctly who he is. Like you say, they've seen him around. By reading the police files, I see that this investigation took multiple jurisdictions and multiple police agencies, 3 months and 2 states to talk to relatives, to find where he used to live in California, talk to the people that were there. All of these different things that were done. So that's one thing I think about, is these officers standing out there in the snow and the rain on Black Friday reading a letter to Thomas Winterton about.
But I've got to say, Black Friday is not exactly a big thing up in Vernal. It's
reading a letter about portals on Skinwalker Ranch. And another thing that stands out to me is that the officers at no point in time demonstrated any concern about all of this Skinwalker legend stuff. Nowhere in any of the material we got, nowhere in the conversations that we hear from the video clips, nowhere, no how were they ever worried about hitchhiker effect, about any ghosts or goblins or aliens getting them, no werewolves, none of that. They were, to whatever extent, they were concerned about the motorcycle and the body. In fact, they asked Winterton.
More so the motorcycle.
Yeah, they asked Winterton to search the ranch, which again shows a lack of concern about any woo out there, and he declined. He did not give them permission. Told them that they were filming and that they should come back tomorrow. That happened towards the end of February.
Right. And
for whatever reason, there was like a 3-month lap between impounding the motorcycle
and from what I understand, they were not filming at that period of time. That is what I have heard. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But that does show a very blatant, you've got somebody that is potentially in harm's way. We're looking for somebody that left you a motorcycle, and you can't take the time to just allow somebody to search the property for somebody. I mean, that shows to me, shows to me a lack of concern about the people that are actually supporting and listening to your show and your rhetoric. But
another point that I noted was the residents that told the officer, "No, I have not looked for the body." I can really understand that it's not even a thing about fear of a dead person or anything like that. It's that I wouldn't, if I had an alternative, I'll put it that way. My first choice would not be telling the police that I was the first at the scene of a dead body. I just wouldn't want to. Let them find it, let them look at the scene, and then there's never going to be any concern that I touched anything, that I moved anything, that I contaminated any evidence. I just haven't been there. That would be my preferred way of doing it. So even the people that may have owned the property or been regulars in the area, I can very much understand their aversion from wanting to conduct it. Like, that's why they called the police. Yes.
right, and that would be very traumatic, and you could tell that the people that were there being interviewed on body camera footage were very concerned about that, and they were concerned about the life of this human being, and there was little anyway, I think all of this speaks for itself. The records speak for themselves. But as we've tried to focus on so many times with Expanding Frontiers research, like I said 10 minutes ago, the information that you're putting forward matters. And when you're continually promoting information about things that are harmful, things that are frightening, things that induce, paranoia or fear, it's not a good. It doesn't result in the best of situations in some cases. So
Yeah, there are consequences to actions. And this is, as we were talking earlier about, we can have differing opinions on what the facts indicate, but we should be able to agree on what the facts are. And indeed, the records do speak for themselves. Here's the police report. Here's what they say happened. Then we can form our opinions and what we think may be inferred from these different things. And by the way, the Uinta County Attorney's Office tells us there are still more records that they are in the process of reviewing and releasing. I appreciate their assistance with this, but I am none too thrilled on it taking what's been months now since the grammar request was initially submitted to the sheriff's office. But yet another aspect of this is that letter, the manila envelope with a letter to Thomas Winterton. And how much was this individual influenced by these different narratives and things? It's hard to say. And Erica brought to my attention, then I went back and looked more closely. They claim to have seen what could be interpreted as a UFO that morning, Thanksgiving morning. Well, it was apparently one of the last things they ever wrote. was about seeing a fireball with jets chasing it or circling it, or it's something to that effect. They interpreted or wrote that they interpreted from a nearby motel in the area that morning. On that same page, they referenced the episode of Secret of Skinwalker Ranch where some of the UAPX crew had visited. That one of them, I've never watched the episode, but from what I understand, one of them supposedly fell ill, and this was supposed to be a big deal and evidence of, spooky stuff out on Skinwalker Ranch or whatever. And this was in, apparently, this gentleman's thoughts, and among the last things he ever wrote about. The public records as well do state that the officers did get a hold of some people, and there towards the end of February, and spoke with them. And one of the people they spoke with, I believe, was in Pennsylvania, that knew Mr. Crow, and said they had spoken to him on the phone and that he was depressed, and that they suspected too that he had probably killed himself. So, as Erica aptly points out, you can consider what it all means. You can think about how much responsibility falls with one person or another. I'm not particularly here to debate that, as much as I see it a important thing to make public records public. And I am proud of the work we've done extracting these records from the sheriff's office, getting them up on websites so that interested parties can review them and make of them what they will. And that's the kind of work that we incorporated the organization to do. And I am proud of this type of work.
Absolutely. I'm proud of the work that we've done on multiple fronts. And, this is, as you and I both know, Jack, this has taken, like you mentioned, months and months and months of going back and forth, of submitting grammar requests, of having mediations with, particular people at the Uintah County, the Uintah County attorney, and people that are working up there that are responsible for providing providing records. And so it's been a lot of behind the scenes work that you've done, that we've done, to get the information to be put out to the public, which again, it's like we did with Phenomicon. These are important bits of information, stories that need to be told about a subject that is used for grifting, that can lead to people, unfortunately, taking this seriously, and like I said, bad things can happen. And this is an unfortunate example of certain people creating narratives that, things like this happen. So
yes, they do. And I see a question: do we have a transcription of the letter somewhere? There are at least 2 letters, actually 3. One was in a plastic bag taped to the windscreen of the motorcycle, and in that plastic bag were some materials. Before I go into that, though, I'll say the answer to your question, Simone, is yes, we do have the letter. If you go to our blog at expandingfrontiersresearch.org/blog and go down to the blog post about the body recovered and that we got records on it, we posted pictures of the entire, I think it's a 6-page letter. You can also find all of these pages in the larger file of all the records we got that we make available through these blog posts as well. So the answer to your question is yes. Okay, the package on the windscreen seemed to have a signed title to the motorcycle so someone could have it, and handwritten instructions about how the motorcycle worked. Then in one of the saddle areas of the bike was a large envelope with Tom Winterton written on it and approximately a 6-page letter counting front and back, where the deceased had written to Winterton about his interpretations of paranormal phenomena at the ranch and that he was seeing around town and things like that. Yes, this is page 1. Erica has pulled up here. And that first paragraph, you can see that's where they interpret that Mr. Crow was telling Tom Winterton that he wanted him to have his bike and how much he admired his work, and the things that he was doing seemed to be in there. And here is part of the blog post where you can see the letter in its entirety. And then yet another letter is referenced that I don't think we have received yet, if it exists in the form of something different than what we've seen. And that is an actual suicide note that, from my interpretation of reading the incident report about the recovery of the body, I interpret that letter was found with the body. So that was not actually found until the end of February, where these materials were found and identified right at the outset, back in the weekend of Thanksgiving. So there's several things going on there with letters, it would seem.
Right. Yeah. So, and I wanted to say that on my end, I have stopped seeing chat. So, Jack, if there are any other questions or comments in chat, my chat stopped working at 6:21. So,
oh goodness,
technology, it's glitching the matrix every week. But yeah, definitely check out the work that we've done. And again, I've talked about Jack on different shows that we've done, and I believe that Nate Carlisle did an interview about specific people that were being influenced with regard to paranormal things about Phenomenon when Fox 13 did that piece. But I often reference Christian Glazer, who was a fellow that was unfortunately having a mental health crisis and had believed that he was being followed by a skinwalker and was terribly frightened. This took place in Colorado, and he ended up in a situation where law enforcement didn't have obviously the proper training to deal with somebody in a mental health crisis like this. And there were several law enforcement officers that were around him for quite some time, and then eventually one officer opened fired on this beautiful young man, taking his life. And so things like this are I mean, we can say that the Art Bell show talking about the comet and things like that aren't, it's like that's not important. And we can also argue about the fact that, well, you can't be responsible for everybody in the world. Okay, great. I get that. We've had these conversations and discussions on the show and in chat. But at the end of the day, like I have said, Jack, and I think you and I both feel the same way, you do have a responsibility to put out information that is accurate. And I think the thing that's always kind of shocked me about Skinwalker Ranch and that group is they have never given themselves any wiggle room And if they really had a good publicist, that publicist would tell them to always leave things, well, but we don't really know at the end of the day what this is. But yet they double down on the hitchhikers and the radiation and, all of these terrible things happening instead of giving themselves that room to be wrong. And I think that in and of itself, like, speaks volumes about the character of those people.
Yeah, and our research and articles repeatedly show that the local law enforcement agencies, the local radiation agencies, environmental agencies, do not express the least concern about the things that these people claim are public safety hazards. And then the wider story here, folks, that we've tried to express is the county uses this as a tourist draw and a revenue creator. And what Eric is getting at about there being a certain responsibility in the information that you publish, the thing that stands out to me about it is the demographic that is being targeted here is not an overly intellectual, discerning, highly educated group of people that know their logical fallacies and practice a lot of critical thinking skills. That's not the targeted demographic. And I think that tends to make it more negligible. That's my opinion. When social issues come up, that they're not looking for people to buy Phenomicon tickets that will ask critical questions. And that makes it more important and more negligent on their part when things go wrong. And that's what makes the publication of the records important too. If you want to wave your flag and beat your chest about things you think you're doing for the community, then you also have a responsibility to objectively and actively be held accountable for the aspects, the byproducts of your efforts that may be less desirable.
Right, and let's talk a little bit about that. We've got a few minutes before show close, but this kind of goes back to the work that we did with Phenomicon and the story that we actually received a credit for and an award for from the Utah Investigative Journalist, our work on Phenomicon. But let's talk a little bit about that. The big thing that group has been trying to promote is the way that this stimulates the local economy. And yet there are no records to actually prove that any revenue was gained by the conference, and who is making the money, who are the vendors that are there that are selling food outside of the conference hall. This is Tour and Travelism, the Travel and Tourism Board who are promoting this. And I see commercials all day, every day about Utah and places to visit. And I can tell you, I've never seen one commercial about, hey, come to Skinwalker Ranch. Why is that? Because you can't get anywhere near it. So it's really not a destination. Like, why? Like, you've got this conference with some very interesting, really not interesting people at all speaking. It's like, what is the point other than to make money for a handful of people that are preying off of other people that are really, people that I know, people that are very good people. Like, what, it's just, to me, that whole thing is it's just a sham. And it is sad to watch people get pulled into this kind of cult of personality. And we're going to, just support, spend hundreds of dollars going to conferences like this. It's just, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, there is definitely a wider social issue to be discussed about the responsibilities of it when the county commission and the funds that support the different offices like of tourism that have these conflicts of interest with the different aspects of Phenomenon, and that it perpetuates belief in things that a demographic of people take very seriously and are disturbed by, and do not view it as entertainment, but as something that lowers their quality of life. There are people that consider alien abduction and the intrusion of demonic spirits and the intrusion of paranormal phenomena to decrease their quality of life and be a very real, disturbing thing. And I'm not here to debate how true or not, or how accurate or not that is, but they certainly take it seriously. And then, as our research has shown and our articles, the Uinta County Commission wants to be absolved of responsibility of the scientific insults to intelligence by these people that are claiming to be doing scientific investigation. And that's where you're right. They're not leaving any wiggle room. You don't have to claim that you're doing a scientific study, but they've chosen to do that, yet cannot demonstrate what's scientific about it. And, you know, we've been over this and over it, that a scientific project will have stated goals, it will have stated methodologies, it will show experiments that are being made to try to form a hypothesis. Then after those experiments, it will explain what worked, what didn't, what supports the hypothesis, what doesn't, and how that hypothesis is now going to be reformed based on the experiments. And then the experiments will be repeated to see if it happens repeatedly. And in best case scenarios, this information will be given to other independent qualified parties that can then conduct the experiments and see if they get the same results, and how all of this shapes the growing and forming hypothesis. And of course, none of this happens if an objective is to get people to a tourist draw or to have a television show that's watched. And if that in fact is the objective. And as I said, they're clearly not targeting, you know, educated, well-adjusted people.
Well, you know, absolutely. And I just have to say, and jump in here and cut you off. I'm sorry, Jack, but I just want to say that it is interesting to me. You know, I think back of, you know, watching Jeremy Corbell, God help me, I need to bathe in holy water. But, you know, listening to his documentary where he's talking to people in the area who are suffering from major health consequences. And he is, you know, one mother is for his movie, was being interviewed about her son and how sick her son was. And, you know, he is equating her son's illness and leading this person on this road to, your illness is caused by UAP exposure. And let's get real here. I've, you know, talked about this multiple times. I interviewed Dr. Brian Mensch, who I mentioned at the beginning of the show is a huge, an incredible person who has been honored nationally for his environmental activism And he talked about, on the show, I would recommend listening to it again, he talked about what's happening in the Uinta Basin. We saw a few years ago the article that was written by Rolling Stone and Newsweek articles talking about how there were a series of stillbirths in the area that people were raising questions about. Is this the oil, the fracking, all of the things that are going on in our environment? And we know up in that area things are very lax because there are people that are making money off of creating these environmental catastrophes. Senator Winterton, Tom Winterton's dad, is high on that list. He sponsored Senate Bill 176, which cleared the Senate and removed language requiring the Utah Permanent Community Impact Fund Board to spend money collected from mineral leasing to help communities allegedly repair damage, but they have not been allocating the money in proper ways. And so you look at the UFO narrative, and isn't this a great blinking red herring? That's all that is there, folks. This is, right next to the ranch. You look at all the rigs that are going up. You look at what's going on in that area, and guess what? All these people are involved in making money off of what's taking place that, by all accounts, is creating harm to the community. So again, another way the UFO narrative is being used, so people like Senator Winterton at the end of the day can do what they're doing.
Yeah, you may very well be right about that, and you're certainly entitled to your assessment and your opinion of it. I would like to ask you also, I know that you tend to take a rather humanitarian view of all of these circumstances, and would you like to summarize what the motorcycle and the deceased individual story represented to you? What do you read in it, Erica?
What I read in it is a person that was vulnerable, a person that went down rabbit holes, as a lot of people do when they get into this subject or the conspiracy, subjects, things like that. I read, well, I saw a person from the notes, from the lengths that he went to travel to be in a specific location to reach out to the caretaker of the ranch. I saw somebody that was reaching out, and somebody that had believed in not only the information that was being put forward by that TV show, but in all likelihood, Ancient Aliens and other shows that are on. And then to have that tragedy, which isn't horrible enough, where somebody would take their life, but to also see, I guess, the lack of concern for that person after this discovery was made, that to me is heartbreaking. And I know that their law enforcement they're stretched thin, and I will give, I would like to say that doesn't alarm me, that they would not conduct the search, but I know that alarmed other people, and the other people, when the deceased individual was found, were very upset that could be the case, and that it could be, somebody could be vulnerable because of a situation of false information being promoted. So that's what that means to me. And so I am a humanitarian. I do care about people. I mean, I think that's evident by everything I've done over the years. My body of work speaks. Hopefully you can still hear me, but I am not sure.
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's good. But hopefully people can, understand that I do, you present facts. You're very good at gathering information, at presenting facts. I am obviously have a more, I have had different experiences with all of this, and especially Skinwalker Ranch and that crew. And so these things they do hit home to me. And I do, at the end of the day, which I know you do as well, care about and want to advocate for individuals who are potentially being manipulated. And, that's important to me. So.
Sure, sure. Thank you. I appreciate you explaining that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so since you can't see me, you, Jack, you get to end the show.
So I'll take us out. Okay. Um, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you very much. We appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening at home, wherever you might be, whenever you might have come across our offering tonight. Thank you. We appreciate you. You can go to our website and see more of our work. We have a video page you can access from the homepage at expandingfrontiersresearch.org. And it has lots of our previous shows and discussions. You can, from the homepage, you can access our blog and see the dozens of things we've written about, which are primarily based in records requests that we've gotten. On the home page, you can, if you'd like to make a one-time donation, you can do that through a secure link that says donate, and you can donate a one-time donation or whatever you would like to do, and we appreciate your support. There's also a link from the homepage to go to our Patreon, the Expanding Frontiers Research Patreon. There we share records that we receive. We discuss how we get them. There are lots of public posts you can view on our Patreon as well, where we explain the FOIA process. We give templates to use. We'll walk people through how we're negotiating with agencies and what's happening on different requests. And with a minimum support of $15 a month, you have access to all of that. And we really appreciate those of you that are supporting us on Patreon. Your donations help us with our ongoing records request fees. They help us with the costs involved in producing this YouTube show. They help us maintain our website and keep posting and publishing all of the records that we obtain. And we really appreciate all of your support. We hope that you find it worth your while, and we hope that you'll be moved to offer some support if you are able to do so. So thank you again. In closing, I will just go ahead and point out Expanding Frontiers Research is a nonprofit Utah corporation. It's tax exempt under Section 501c3 of the United States Internal Revenue Code. And right on our homepage, if you scroll down, you can see our financials and you can view those as well. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you, and we will see you this coming Wednesday. Going to be an early show, early in the week and early evening, 4 p.m., I believe, Eastern, 4 o'clock Eastern this Wednesday. We will be talking to Dave Troy. So thank you. We'll talk to you later.